Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and I'm very delighted to be here with you. Thank you so much for joining me. For those of you who have watched the show or listened to it over the last 6 months now, you'll know that really what I'm trying to achieve here is to create an environment where we, humankind, can recognize the beauty that lies within us, the incredible things that we've accomplished over 6,000 years, or if your religious predilection over the last 6 billion years, whatever it happens to be. And I'll often refer to technology in terms of our development, medicine, that we're feeding more of the world than we ever have before. You know, there were two singer-songwriters in the early 70s whom we all knew. They were world-renowned, and they wrote songs that are not only with us now, but are so classic in nature, you just know that hundreds of years from now they will be around. It's those individuals that I like to talk about, to bring to the forefront. Why? Because I want us to look very deeply into what it means to be a quality creation, to be individuals and to be a collective that really see ourselves in a beautiful light. The two singer-songwriters I'm speaking of are Simon and Garfunkel. And they were brilliant, brilliant together. You just knew that when you were listening to them, you may as well be sitting around a bonfire and taking in that energy that comes from something which sort of, when the ethereal comes together with that stuff on earth. Their lyrics were so moving. Now, there's one song that they wrote, which is called Sound of Silence. And I want to read you a couple of lines, and this is going to segue us into our interview today. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping. And the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams, I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone. Neath the halo of a street lamp, I turned my collar to the cold and damp. When my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light, I saw 10,000 people, maybe more, people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices never shared, and no one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fool, said I, you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words like silent raindrops fell and echoed in the wells of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. And the signs flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming. Then the sign said, the words on the prophets are written on the subway walls, in tenement halls, and whispered in the sounds of silence. Now, I read that to you. We'll flesh that out over the next few minutes. Why? Because my guest today is Dr. H. David Burstein, an old friend of mine. He's a dentist, and he's an individual who sat down at some point in the last couple of years and decided that he wanted to be more creative, to actualize himself. And he wrote a book which is called Smartphones Don't Give Hugs, Dentists and the Epidemic of Loneliness. And I thought that was absolutely beautiful. I thought that was incredible that he did that, because I always appreciate people who are of a particular ilk, a dentist in this case, who decide that they want to write a book, which is a lofty thing. And David decided he was going to write it about loneliness. David, how are you today?
Great, Avrum. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. It's good seeing you again.
Great seeing you.
And we've been buddies for years. Like, it's funny. We have people in our lives. There's some people you see every single day and you wouldn't care if you saw them for another 6 months. And then there are people you see once a year, once every 6 years, and you know you're going to have a good time. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. David, when I was reading the lyrics of Sounds of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel, what came to your mind? What happened inside your head?
Well, what's going on in my head is just as much as the lyrics, it's the music.
Yeah.
I just find that over the last little while, I'm finding the profound effect of music on our lives and the connection of music. And I know, for example, I would probably be able to give you the lyrics of that song, but if I had to do a poem, I couldn't remember it as a poem, but I could sing it to you as a song. So there's just something about the connectivity of what music does for us. And the whole idea of why I wrote the book was to sort of make sense of this epidemic of loneliness that I was experiencing. I was just seeing it all around. I've been aware of it for years. And I guess with what I saw what was going around with the pandemic, I said, instead of avoiding the subject, I said, let's confront it. And I decided to put thoughts that have been going on with my mind for years. And I came up with the book.
How did you see the loneliness? Let me take a leap here. You're a dentist.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a stereotype or if it's a true statistical fact. Dentists seem to be one of the loneliest careers from what we've been saying. It's not unusual for people to say, well, the highest suicide rate is amongst dentists.
Yeah.
So when you say that you've seen loneliness, what have you seen? Where have you seen it?
Well, I just see it all over the place. You hear statistics about teenage depression and teenage suicide, and you see what was going on with the elderly. And unfortunately, you're just hearing about people. They're all just all over the place. As much as people, we've been connected. With everything that goes on in life, you always have to ask the question, well, what's the downside? And so as much as we can be talking to somebody and we can connect, I can pick up this phone and in 3 seconds be talking to somebody in Australia, yet I don't know how to have a conversation with somebody standing right in front of me. And it's just fascinated me that people, you hear stories about people who just experienced loneliness, yet at the same time we have all that more superficial social connection. And I realized that when it comes to problems in life, there are 3 ways we can handle them. We can confront, we can ignore, or we can retreat. And I just decided one day, you know what, let's dive into this. But the problem is what's funny about loneliness is that most people are afraid to admit it because you think that you're being perceived as being a loser if you say I'm feeling lonely.
Yes.
And notice I just said feeling lonely as opposed to I am lonely. And a big part of the whole discussion is how we actually talk to ourselves. I am lonely is more of a personal statement, whereas I am feeling lonely is a detachment between who we are and the actual feeling of loneliness. And there's a chapter in the book that I talk about, about being our own best friend. And a big part of that has to do with how do we talk to ourselves in the conversation we have with ourselves. Mm-hmm. And again, there's, being lonely, there's a huge difference between being lonely and being alone. And one of the goals of our lives is to enjoy our own company and have our own interests and be creative in our own way when we're not responsible to others. And I've always enjoyed the process of thrashing out ideas. I've been writing articles for my Jewish dental fraternity for over 30 years. When I'd be learning stuff, I'd say, what's the connection between all of this stuff? And I'd write down ideas, and said that's where one of my avenues of creativity came in is in my writing.
David, let me ask you about loneliness itself. From what I understand, there's many different types of loneliness. There's emotional loneliness, social loneliness, there's situational loneliness, chronic loneliness, and there's existential loneliness. I am very fortunate that I have a lot of people in my life. I have a big family, thank God, and I'm very much involved in community. But there are times where I am sitting by myself on my couch, Friday night, let's say, Shabbat, and I feel this deep, deep hole, this deep sense inside of me that I am alone, that I am alone in this world, knowing full well that I can pick up the phone to my non-religious friends, and
Mhm.
say, "Hi, how you doing?" What sort of loneliness are we talking about here?
Okay, you're making up a really good point. And before I go any further, just know I'm not trying to be anything more than I am.
Mhm.
One of the first things I do in the book, I give a medical disclaimer. If anybody has serious problems, don't take the contents of the book as a substitute for professional psychological help. But it's just a feeling of the classic definition of loneliness is when there's a gap in your perceived levels, the need of your. Let me just so I don't screw it up here. Okay, loneliness is defined as a distressing feeling that accompanies the perception that one's social needs are not being met by the quantity or especially the quality of one's social relationships. And so it's very important to know that you just know that there's a lack of connection to other human beings, and you sometimes don't know what it is. It's like when it's really funny when people say, well, give me a definition. It's like, I don't know, like I don't know, like what's love, what's happiness, what's loneliness, what's pornography, what's this. And it's like Porter Stewart said about pornography. He says, I don't know what it is, I just know when I see it.
Mhm.
I don't know, I can't really define loneliness, I just know when I'm experiencing it.
Now, at some point in time, you're a father of three teenagers, you're a dentist, you're a community guy, you have your hands full. But at some point in time, you decided you were going to sit down and start putting pen to paper and write a book. And firstly, I want to say that's a really lofty thing, something that I want to do, and I just haven't been able to do it yet. But I have always had such deep respect for people who write books. So well done on that.
No, I feel it's a real accomplishment. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. How did you come up with the subject? Like, do you see yourself as a happy, well-adjusted individual who has blossomed in life and is very blessed to have lots of family and friends? And or is there a side of you which is lonely?
Oh, there's a definite side of me that's lonely. I just in being afraid of speaking out in certain situations that people really don't know as my soul isn't known in the world as well as I would have liked it to be in certain aspects. Like I remember when I was, when I, with, other than the definitions you gave to loneliness, again, there's different categories. I tend to divide it up into the self, an intimate partner, family and friends, community and purpose. So I just know that there was, uh, I'm divorced, and so I never, our marriage never was as good as it could have been, and it's no wonder it ended up in divorce. And I get along better with my ex right now too. So that just,
Yeah.
but that you don't know that my soul in the world has not really been revealed to the intimate partner the way I would like to. Like I remember when I was single and I'd be interested in a woman, I would be saying, "Don't you know how nice I want to be to you?"
That's nice. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and you're upset of being as much as being rejected. I felt that my goodness would not be expressing itself in the way that I wanted it to be.
Hmm. Hmm.
And now I know in other ways. Again, as a matter of fact, I think you're bringing up a good point with this. See, this book is me. The book really, I can really, I almost feel like if I was to go out on a date with a girl, I said, "Here, do I know here? Forget the
Yeah.
date.
Here's my book. Yeah.
Here's the
Right,
book,
exactly.
and I'll check in with you in 2 weeks, and then we could talk. You have a sense of who I am." But
You know, the loneliness that we speak of, I think you're right. I think it's absolutely ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and it's multi-generational, and it goes back centuries, likely to the Garden of Eden.
well,
Um,
as a matter of fact, one of the stories I tell in one of the questions I have in I tell in my book is I say, what is God's first negative observation?
It's not good for man to be alone.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So here's God. Like, again, the Bible goes back a long way. And and God has created 13 billion years to create the world. And he does this, and it's good. He does this, it's good. He does this, it's good. He does this, it's good. He creates man, it's very good. It's not good for man to be alone. So it's an idea that has been with us a long time. And also what's interesting about it is that loneliness is not in itself a bad thing. It's telling us that we're needing social connections, and that human beings are social creatures. And it's what other type of reminder do we need? The guy who wrote the book on loneliness is this guy named John Cacioppo. And what he did in the book, he talks about, he says that he makes loneliness similar to thirst, hunger, and pain. The same way, if you need water, you're thirsty. You need to get hydrated, you're thirsty. You're hungry, you need food. You need social connection. You need the feeling of loneliness. And again, loneliness in and of itself is not a bad thing. And what I've been realizing is that loneliness is actually one of the most important emotions we have, because it actually what drove civilization forward. That we need each other. Now, maybe when God is telling the story, he says, the man was too stupid to realize that he was alone, but God knew that there was something better, that he needed a helper.
And just to add to the Judaic piece of this, is that when you study the Torah, you see that within the Torah, over and over and over, there is an imperative of taking care of the widow and the orphan. And when I was reading up on loneliness for this interview, I took a look at the Jewish perspective on it, because I'm very Jewish. And basically what I discovered, David, was that, and I always wondered about this, why so much focus on the widow and the orphan? Yes, of course, be aware of what their struggles are. They need help. Mm-hmm. And I have some, individuals in my family who lost their spouse, and I see it. I experienced it, how much help they need. And then I realized kind of what you're getting at, what you were saying, is that is a lonely existence. It's very difficult to be a widow, not to have a partner. It's very difficult to be an orphan, not to have parents. And we all remember those orphans that we grew up with in school. They were just different. And there was a sort of a cloud over them, right?
Yeah. No, it's we're social creatures, and if you notice, of all of the various rituals in Jewish life, what are the ones that are commemorated the most? It's about the change of relationships.
Yes.
It's the birth of a child. It's the bar mitzvah, which is really a coming out party for the individual, that they can be able to take care of themselves. There's the bonding of two individuals at a marriage. And there's the rituals that are involved with the death. And basically what it is, that there's a change in the status of relationships. And so much of loneliness has to do with social connection. And these are the different types of social connections. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is there's a chapter about surrounding yourself with people who want the best for you.
Yes.
Different types of people bring out certain relationships. And one is not necessarily a substitute for another. You go to a baseball game and you give somebody a high five after the Jays get a home run. It's not the same as going home and getting a hug from your loved one. But on the other hand, if life was only getting hugs from your loved one, that's good. But there's more to life than that. You need the energy of the different types of energy of social connection. What does a child bring into your life? What does a spouse bring into your life? What do brothers and sisters bring into your life? What do the satisfaction of doing your job well bring into your life? What does the satisfaction of having a sense that you're part of something bigger than yourself, that you've given your best and look what you can produce of the synergy that goes on? It's been really funny with what's gone on in the Jewish world with post 10/7. is in many ways, as a Jew, I feel more lonely in the world, and yet in many ways I feel more attached to the Jewish
Yeah.
people than I ever have.
Yes.
So it's just an interesting existence. And then you realize that as much as you want to feel bonded to 8 billion people, so I feel bonded to 15 million people. And you know what? That's good enough.
Mhm.
In many ways, that's knowing that I have this family that cares about me and I care about them. And you sort of say, what the hell do you want in your life? And, you know, when you have to, when in one of the chapters, they tell you, what do you want your tombstone to say? It's all about your relationships.
It's very true.
If they say in my relationship he was a good athlete and a decent dentist, and that's it, the people would say, you know, it must have been a schmuck. It's the quality of our relationships, and and one of the big things I really stress, it's the one-on-one. And like we were talking about before about the internet, I love conversations. I love podcasts. I love it. Again, it's the quality of the one-on-one relationship. And like right now, you and I are having this conversation. I'm not trying to one-up you. You're not trying to one-up me. We are together trying to build something that's bigger than ourselves. And then you realize that hopefully after this whole thing is over, people are going to be watching this and say, God, these two guys got along. They brought up some very interesting points. And by listening to this, I hope they created something that's bigger than the two of them together.
David, I was very blessed to have a brother-in-law who was a scholar and who had an incredible understanding of human behavior. His name was Rabbi Benjamin Hecht.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbi Hecht passed away during COVID, as his wife did, Naomi, my sister.
Right.
Yeah, Oy is right. And we've lost two very special people. But he brought me closer to myself. He really, really opened my eyes up to my strengths and my foibles. And he challenged me on different sort of what I thought were a priori, things that in life that I was convinced was who I was and how life was supposed to be. He took away some of my loneliness. Who in your life did that for you?
Not too many people, or different people do it in different ways. I think one of people complain about me is I'm too guarded because I'm afraid of if I showed all of my faults, I wouldn't be loved.
Yes.
And it was only when I started realizing that's a bunch of crap. That's not how you're supposed to live. You're supposed to be able to expose yourself. You're supposed to be able to make yourself vulnerable. I grew up not wanting to get hurt, not wanting to fail, not wanting to look bad. And that's not life. There's one of the quotes I have in the book is from I was a huge Carly Simon fan growing up, and she has this in one of her songs that there's a lyric to something to the effect, I meant to keep my distance, afraid of striking out, but protect myself from life is all I've done. And and I think in many ways, one of the purposes of parenthood is to teach resilience, of recognizing that falling on your face and embarrassing yourself is the growth process of life. Like, what are you going to tell an infant when they're starting to learn how to walk? Oh, I'm sorry, dear. You know, you're crawling. Stay. I don't want you to fall. It's bullshit. And accept that making what's the line? You fail your way to success. Mm-hmm. I think somebody wrote a book called "Fail Your Way to Success," mm-hmm. And that's life. And I guess it's a matter of having mentors, having parents around to sort of give you guardrails, give you encouragement, give you guardrails, give you guidance, and that's what people want. But a very important function of parenthood is to know how to encourage someone and say, okay, you know what, if you fall, you fall. Mm-hmm. Big deal. Like there's one story I tell in the book about this this kid, when he was like 9 years old, he was a good skater. So his parents put him in a speed skating course. And he was told that every single time he fell, it was progress, because it meant he was pushing himself beyond his limit of his comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone. What do you mean, get out of my comfort zone? And then lately I've been asking my kids the following: what would you prefer if you only had so much energy in your life? Would you rather be a caterpillar learning how to build a cocoon, or would you rather be a butterfly getting out of the cocoon?
Oh, great question. Yeah, great question.
And the point, and ultimately, like again, then you sort of go to the book of Ecclesiastes. There's a time and season for everything, but ultimately, you want to feed the things that you got. You want to break out of your cocoon. The purpose of a butterfly's life is not to stay in the cocoon.
Yes.
And I have this whole thing about, this negative, it's one of the brilliant things of nature, that the cocoon has to be strong enough to protect the caterpillar while it's metamorphosizing into the butterfly, but it can't be too strong that the butterfly can't get out. And I've been told that the same thing that they say with, if I'm not mistaken, when it comes to chickens, baby chicks, if they are hatched by themselves, they need to get their heart going by the pecking. If you were just to crack open the egg and do it for them, they're not getting the impetus they're not going to survive, because they haven't had to put in the effort to get out of them on their own. So you have to, again, and lately I've been thinking about the whole idea of rites of passage that we have in our life, of learning a bar mitzvah portion, and what you have to do, and go through the difficulty of doing a bar mitzvah portion. And maybe you'll fail, but it's something that we all have to do on our own. Because again, like the last thing that we don't want to be is we also want to know ourselves. And then all of a sudden you realize, like the other day, I was, in all honesty, I had a good cry over something. And I was smart enough to sit back and say, God, I never realized that this particular issue in my life was bothering me so much. And the fact that I was crying over it, I said, holy crow, this is really a gateway into my soul, over the fact that I'm feeling this badly, or that even like, why am I feeling loneliness over this? I was able to, within my loneliness, I say, well, I got this. So what's missing? Oh, I really realize how much I miss the intimate partner.
Yes.
So, but nobody has it all. I have a wonderful life. I don't have an intimate partner. And it's one of the things, when there's a line I use in the book, I call the master bedroom a sanctuary of rejuvenation. And when properly done, that's what the master bedroom is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it was interesting when I was starting to write the book. I remember I was talking with a woman who's a member of my congregation, who's in her 80s right now, and she said the loneliest she ever was in the first year of her first marriage, mm-hmm. when she was in bed with her first husband and she realized she didn't want to be with him.
Yes.
So as much as you look at what's supposed to be so good, when it's done properly, that's the best. And I think what goes on right now, people are afraid, they're afraid of showing weakness. Like, again, I can say, here I am, a divorced dentist. It would have been nice, all things being equal, if my first wife and I could have worked things out. But it's not meant to be. But on the other hand, be man enough to admit it. Okay, so I'm not living a ideal existence, or the nuclear family is the best. but people are so afraid. Oh my God, my feelings are hurt if I'm going to say, oh no, oh my God, I'm living as a divorced guy who has bouts of loneliness. Okay, so what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? And it's funny. I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, and I was listening to him this morning, and he says there's three things that you have to ask. You have to decide what you're going to focus on. You're going to have to decide what is the meaning of it, and then what are you going to do about it? And it's the same thing with our loneliness. I'm feeling lonely. Okay, what am I going to do about it? And then all of a sudden say, well, David, geez, you haven't been dating a lot. Obviously, it can't be that important to you, or you're really not as lonely as you're saying you are, or you're fooling yourself living in this existence. So you want to have something to keep complaining about. I'm lonely, I'm lonely, I'm lonely. So why aren't you going out? Well, I don't want, so somebody like, I guess a good friends are there to call you on your bullshit.
David, talking about solutions to loneliness, there have been, firstly, I want to tell you something, that you're very erudite. And I was reading some of the reviews of you as a dentist.
Mm-hmm.
And they essentially said he's a great dentist, he's fair with his prices, and he's a really nice guy. Does going to work and having those patients that you've had for many years, let's say, is that something that can add to your sense of community, being part of a life, and on the flip side, take away loneliness?
For sure. Listen, work is hugely important. Knowing that, especially, it's especially in the world we're living in right now. Like I had some back surgery earlier this year.
Yes.
When a human being is in pain, and you're able to take another human being out of physical pain, that is huge. It is a really big thing. And as a matter of fact, and again, it's where you know that you're helping another human being. There's a big, when I was doing my research, a big part of the research was the way to get out of loneliness is help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there's one of my favorite things about life, when early on in Genesis, when it says, let us create man in our image. Well, if God is invisible, what does it mean to be created in the image of God? Well, when Jews celebrate Shabbat, we remember two things. God created the world, and God brought the Jews out of Egypt. So what does that mean as a human being? How does that translate as a human being? Be positively creative and help bring others to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
You know what, my guy Avrum? It's like one of the It's like it's just a real basic idea. Yeah, it's a basic idea.
But what is it though, David? Well, why does helping someone else? I concur with you, by the way. What is it about helping someone else that sort of centers you, that helps you find your core, that takes away from loneliness? What is that?
You're helping another person. Well, maybe this is part of our being social creatures. That what is being lost by me not helping you reach your potential? That's what I want to do with my children. I'm raising my children to help them reach their God-given potential, because we know when life is done properly, it's great. And what did they say? What's the old thing, that when somebody's on their deathbed, they're not as if they're not. I think Harold Kushner said this. They're not, people aren't afraid of dying. They're afraid that they didn't live.
Yes.
So you don't want it. So you want that sense of, okay, I did good, and I helped others. Like it's really funny. One of the things people talk about, money can't buy happiness. You know what? It can buy happiness. I wish I was wealthy enough, Avrum, that I could have $50 million and say, here, I want you to build this wing at this hospital,
Yeah.
surgical wing at this hospital. That would buy me happiness.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the point about money buying happiness is that it buys you happiness to an extent.
Right. Well,
right.
Absolutely, but don't think it's not. And like again, money is damn important, because one of the things that I do in the main imagery I have in the book that I want when people to think about loneliness is that it's a light on an emotional fuel gauge, so a social emotional fuel gauge of the energy we get from social connection. And then instead of worrying about the light going off, we should be conducting ourselves in such a way that we keep the needle as far to the right as possible.
Yes.
And so I look at this whole thing as being social energy. And like happiness to me is a state of energy. Love is a state of energy. Friendship is a state of energy. Money is energy. Money is social energy. Like I know, for example, when I see I have happened to know some very wealthy people, and I can see how they're able to give more charity than I can. I know that in the pit of my stomach, I say, geez, I just can't afford to be as generous as they are. And it's a real, and I see how much it hurts me. And so I can start lashing myself. Why didn't I do this thing with how I handled money when I was younger? So to me, it's all about social energy. It's about social energy. It's about making connection. It's all this simple stuff. It's like, how do you learn stuff? It's what is learning? It's when you make a connection.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I want to touch on that. I think that there are many different ways to overcoming loneliness. And you're right. There's a distinction between being alone and feeling loneliness. One of the things that you bring forward as a solution is reading a good book. I actually have a list of books here that have been written, somewhat classic in nature over time, having to do with isolation and loneliness. One is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. She was a very lonely person, and in the end, she actually killed herself. A Man Called Ove by Frederick Backman. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Now, there's a classic book that probably all of us have read, which is called The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Mm-hmm. And in it, the main character, Holden Caulfield, is a poignant, he's a teenager. And it's sort of like his poignant exploration and struggle to find genuine humane connection amidst the world of superficiality. It's an incredible book that was so popular because Salinger was able to speak the language of teenagers, right? And when they picked it up and they read it, they go, yeah, that's me. Mm-hmm. So, but what I really want to touch on is when you're sitting on your lazy boy, and you grab a book, and I know you're a voracious reader, and you always have been, and you open that book and you bury yourself in it for that half hour, 2 hours, maybe Shabbos afternoon, 4 hours, who knows? There is this incredible sense of feeling hearty, feeling good about yourself, finding your core, finding your center. How does that work, David? Where does that come from?
I think it's just reading to me is most important, because reading is you are actually the one creating the story, mm-hmm. as opposed to watching a movie or being spoken to. When you read, there's it's a much greater what's the word I'm looking for? The whole mechanism of the creation and using your imagination. You're just getting into it's into a whole new realm. I think that I was reading somebody talking about, I think it was Rabbi Manis Friedman was talking about imagination, or those things that you can be thinking of without using your senses.
Yes.
And I just think that there's something that, you're never alone when you're with a good book.
Yeah. Now, what is that though? Why is that?
People like stories. I don't know.
I have a theory. Tell me what you think of my theory. I think that what reading a book does, it brings you closer to yourself, to the self. I grew up in a family. My father was a rabbi. My mother was a Rebbitzin. My father was born in 1928. My mother in 1930. And it was a generation where my dad wasn't around a lot. You know, he was really taking care of the congregants mostly. And I was not one who was told about my strengths, about who I was. I really had very little sense of myself. And that only started to come later on in life when I started to develop myself, my strengths. And as I said before, started to see my foibles. Part of that was reading, right? Because when I would sit down and read, David, I would, let's say I just finished reading Tolstoy's book, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. And it's all about dying, really, and subsequently life. And when I would read a particular piece that Tolstoy wrote, I would stop and I would think about it. And to me, the idea of I think, therefore I am makes a lot of sense. My mind would start working. My mind would start working, right? It would be an internalization of thoughts and idea. And subsequently, and we all do this, at the end of my sort of intellectual jousting about his ideas of death, I would bring it back to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I start to think to myself, A, I'm living, I'm alive. I pinched myself. I could feel it, the pain. And I'm going to die one day.
Mm-hmm.
And not meaning to be maudlin, but it's those things that really opened up my thinking, my mind, my heart, my soul, just by reading them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that resonate at all?
Yeah, for sure. But by the way, I'm not as big a reader as you think. I have a book. I believe in shelf improvement, not self improvement.
Okay.
That was a line by this guy named Jim Quick. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's
No, it's a good line.
Brilliant guy. I just think that, well, it's the same type of thing with any experience, how we learn different things about ourselves. Like you can watch a movie and let's say one person can say, well, this scene really hit home with me, whereas another scene hit home with another person. But I think that, or you're reading a book and you can identify with one particular character more than another one. That would be an interesting. I just think that when you're reading it, it's so personal. It's just maybe that's what it is that because it's a personal experience and you're reading it and you're reading the book volitionally, as opposed to when we used to be reading books in university or high school. Well, I had to, I remember, it's funny you talk about Catcher in the Rye. I didn't have to write a test because I won the trivia contest about Catcher in the Rye.
No.
Like Ward Stradlater, I remember he used rusted razor blades. How do I remember this crap from grade 12?
We all do, man. We all do.
It's so funny with us as human beings. But no, I think I know my sister. She's a big reader, and that's all part of her time of settling down. Every night she reads for half an hour before she goes to bed, and that really calms her down. Or there's also as being a parent, one of those those times we have with our child when we're cuddling with our 3-year-old child and are reading them a book at night, and there's just the bonding that goes on. Like there's just different things to mean different things to different people. One of the ideas I brought up lately is, do you know anybody who doesn't enjoy a campfire?
No, you were saying that's right. And you added to that, you said, who doesn't love a hot dog from a bonfire more from the pot on the oven, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
A boiled hot dog.
A boiled hot dog.
Yeah. But it's or the whole thing of, listen, I in my Jewishness, I fall in love with Judaism every weekend when I do my Torah study.
Yes, me too.
And it's like, well, you sort of say, well, what exactly is going on here? Is it that what God said? Is it what Moses responded? Or is it the fact that I'm reading a commentary by a rabbi who lived 800 years ago about a story that's 3,000 years ago? Oh my God, I'm part of an ongoing chain.
Yes.
I have a responsibility here this this helps add meaning to my life and purpose. That I know this 3,500-year-old tradition is not ending with me. And then it has a sense, okay, am I raising my children? What are the values that I want to teach them about? And I say, guys, this stuff is this. You may as a teenager now, you may be rejecting it. You may not think it's important. It's damn important, especially with what's going on in the world right now. And there's, with when Netanyahu said the other day, this is a battle of civilization. This is not set. This is like Western civilization is based on this book, and we are people of a book. And I think, as a matter of fact, I think with a lot of the envy of the Jews is this sense of belonging that a lot of other people don't have.
Yes.
And you don't want to, or you're away on vacation, and it's just amazing. Like somehow the Jews find each other. Or you're traveling anywhere in the world, you can say, okay, well, where's the synagogue in Sofia, Bulgaria, and you'll find it.
Yes.
And then you start singing the tunes to one another, and you say, oh my God, like how does this bonding? You feel bonded and connected to somebody, and you get a certain amount of social energy. And I personally think a lot of the causes of nowadays are a displacement for the fact that these people don't have stuff going on in their own lives, either a macro affiliation, or I would very often ask, like, what was your relationship like with your father? Like you want to, sometimes you go up to people and say, what are you so angry about? There's something else. There's something else going on here. What's really missing in your life? Why can't you look at yourself and say, oh my, and then listen, everybody wants attention.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, in thinking about our conversation today, I'm thinking about, when done properly, Judaism is a wonderful, it's so psychologically brilliant. It's not only about a relationship with God, not only about a relationship with ourselves. There's the 10 Commandments. There's relationship with part of the community. The whole thing about, like, well, when Jews pray, well, we pray in the plural, but we know it's about ourselves. So there's this creative tension in there's the creative tension in the dichotomy of it, and it's that energy between the two that is part of what helps fight the loneliness. Like I said before, loneliness is all about a lack of the energy of social connection.
Yeah, no, I agree with that theory. I would take it a little bit deeper to say that it's also very often a broken link within yourself. Like you spoke about Judaism as being the development of your relationship with God, true. The development of your relationship with your chaver, with your community, true. But it's also about the development of your relationship with yourself. Absolutely. And ben adam la'atzmi, it's called in Hebrew. And my argument about overcoming loneliness, at least in part, is to go deeply inside yourself and ask yourself how comfortable you are with who you are. I have a great love of myself. Sometimes it comes across as arrogance, but other times it's just such appreciation for being born, when I was born, to who I was born, where I was born, and just being able, having the blessings of developing myself intellectually, etc. Mm-hmm. But there's also a side of me, David. I also harbor a certain disdain of myself. Yeah. And I think that loneliness can often come from that feeling, in my case anyways, of that feeling of myself as, ooh, I'm a little bit skittish. And you kind of touched on this before. I'm a little bit skittish about being too vulnerable, about opening up, letting people know who I am. So I will isolate myself. Mm-hmm. I will do that. Yeah. Is that you at all?
Well, I'm more the second than the first. I've never had a tremendous love for myself.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, in going through my divorce, I was always saying to people, the people who love me are the people who are carrying me through this experience.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I got to learn to love myself and understand my own decency within myself. And when I feel certain things, I say, oh, geez, I guess I am a good soul.
Are you better at it?
I'm better than I was. Again, like in writing the book, I realized I give all of these suggestions, and I sort of realized that if I'm starting to feel lonely, I said, okay, well, what's missing here? I don't like this feeling. Oh, okay, well, David, go outside and go for a walk.
Yes.
Go outside and read a book. Go outside. You haven't spoken to so and so lately, so phone them up, and just do it. Tony Robbins has this great line. He says, "Psychology through physiology." You can't think yourself happy.
Mm-hmm.
You can't think yourself unlonely. You got to be doing. You got to do. In the whole Landmark Forum, I came up with this line of it's Frank Sinatra's "Strangers in the Night." Do be. 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 Just be and do. Thank you. Again, it's like there's a lot of really simple, basic ideas. And one of the most important things I realize is that it only takes one person.
Yeah.
As much as yourself. Like one of the image that I end the book on is that the final scene of the movie Field of Dreams, when Kevin Costner is throwing the baseball back and forth with his father. And you're playing catch with your father.
Yeah, it was a great line. It was a great line you had. You said, "Who do you want to play catch with?"
That's right.
That's a great line.
Yeah, with whom do you want to play catch?
Yeah, very good.
It's simple. And again, in that interview of mine that you saw, you said, when I'm dealing with my son, it's like when he was 3 years old. Okay, I'm tossing the ball to him nice and lightly, and then you go back and forth, and then you do it every single year. And then when he's turning 12, 13 years old, all of a sudden he's whipping the ball back at you and saying, this is good. Yeah. I have to work harder.
Yes.
And then you realize that a big part too of defining ourselves as an individual is who are we when we're in society. And we want to feel good about ourselves. We don't want to feel lonely in society. Like with what I was telling you before about my sense of loneliness that I sometimes have when I see how successful some friends of mine are. I know that in a public forum, I'm going to lay a little bit lower because I don't feel that I am accomplishing or giving as much to a particular. I can't afford to give as much to this particular charity that I believe in, so I don't feel that I'm taking as much responsibility as I could be. But you realize, so I make it up in other ways, like like the time I'm spending with my kids, they probably complain. Every child has complaints about parents, but for what I'm short in one way, I'm making up for it in another.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
David, you pardon me for coughing. I've had this cough for a long time now. There are individuals throughout history. I went on ChatGPT and I made a request for a list of 10 people who would be considered lonely in life, alone in life. We can juxtapose those two words for a moment. And here's the list that I came up with. Isaac Newton. Mm-hmm. He was known for his solitary work at Royal Observatory during the Great Plague of London. Newton made groundbreaking contribution to mathematics and physics while working alone. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, much of it in solitary confinement during his fight against apartheid in South Africa. Henry David Thoreau lived alone in a cabin at Walden Pond for 2 years, documenting his observations and philosophical reflections in Walden. Franz Kafka, Van Gogh, the list goes on.
Yeah.
Is that being alone, or is that loneliness? What these people did?
I think it's being alone because so for example, I take a great pride in writing this book. And this book is part of my legacy, but my most important legacy is the relationship I have with my children.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Or like, when you talk, as much as you're talking about those people before, what's interesting is that it's not like we know anything about Moses. It's family life. We don't know too much about the family life of a lot of these very famous people, and what is really what I think Harold Kushner once said. In order for people to be what they became, what did they have to give up? And their sacrifices for everything.
Yes.
Somebody could say, okay, you know what? It's not it's not worth winning the Stanley Cup. Would I have wanted to miss? If I was a professional athlete, would I have wanted to miss the Stanley Cup to witness the birth of my child? Yeah. No, of course I would. The birth of this child is more important to me. But you know what I mean? It's like there's costs to everything, and if people don't admit that there are costs, then they're fooling themselves.
Let me ask you something. The name of the book is "Smartphones Don't Give Hugs."
Right.
That's a good name. I'm curious how you came up with it. But my real question is, we're 55 minutes into this interview. We have not talked about smartphones.
Yeah.
Is it really about smartphones and loneliness, the book?
It's mainly about the epidemic of loneliness.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter that I was seeing that we're in absolute in love with our phones. We were in love with the technology. But at the end of the day, you can't get a hug from a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was saying before, if the technology was awful, that would be different. It is fantastic. It is unbelievable. Like I've had some ideas about when you think about what the hell is going on, you say, oh yeah, right. Like the other couple of months ago, I had this experience. I was in my bedroom and I wanted to print something on my computer. So I take my phone, I press a button, then all of a sudden, 10 seconds later, my printer that's in my den spits out this document. And you say, what the hell just went on here? And you really think about the connection that went on. It almost was like a relationship with God. If the energy that I thought I want to print this article, and then 10 seconds later, the article's printed. What happens if the printer isn't plugged in? What happens if there's plugged in, but there's not enough ink? Or what happens if there's enough ink, but there's not enough paper to receive the messages? And it's a matter of how do we sort of coordinate ourselves that we sort of get plugged in with other human beings? And I think a big part of what's happened with all of the technology is that we're too distracted to know how to develop a proper relationship with somebody. Over the last while, I've been doing a little research about ADHD, and part of the problem is everybody is so distracted. You don't have time to make that connection. Like for example, like when we started this conversation, I shut off my phone. Yes. Why? Because I wanted to be focused on you. But if I knew that at any time this phone is going to go off, or if I knew that I'm having this conversation with you and that I could all of a sudden be thinking to myself, geez, I wonder what's going on in the Blue Jay game right now. And knowing that the technology is right there, that I could be distracted, my stream of consciousness can get in the way of our having a conversation. But the whole thing of this whole past hour is my connection with you.
Yes.
And so, in the book, I talk about developing our communication skills, appreciating the importance of nonverbal communication, understanding how hormones work, understanding how do we manage our emotions, how do we react to fear and change. Knowing that there's a spectrum from loneliness to love, surrounding ourselves with people who want the best for us, being our own best friend, and then just living a smart life. Like with the analogy to a fuel gauge, if a person is living their life well, it's like you don't even have to worry. You're not going to be lonely. Like they say, are you happy? I say, geez, I never thought about it. I guess I must be.
Yes. That's a really good point. I often ask people, "Are you happy?" And that's often the response is, "I think so." Or
Yeah,
I say to people, "Are you lonely?" You go, "No, I'm not lonely at all."
yeah,
And those are very, very fulfilled and well developed people.
yeah,
David, I think the whole issue of loneliness, which is, as I said before, very ubiquitous, very prominent.
yeah.
I think, thank God, that it's really starting to be looked at in many different levels of society. I'm sure you know that Britain has a minister of loneliness. Did that blow you away when you first heard that?
Well, it seems how typical, because they're not going to cure. I can understand why they have it. I understand the intentions of what they're doing,
Yeah.
but it's like loneliness is like we're going to stop. People are no longer going to be thirsty. The minister of thirst.
Yes.
Give me a break. Now, is it that pathetic that people are? You're not going to. All you can do is all we can do in life. Like I was saying before, all you can do in life is try to create an environment so a person is going to be able to find it for themselves. But just like you're never going to make somebody happy, I'm not going to make you unlonely. I could spend all of this time with you and say, are you unlonely now? Do you feel welcome now? Do you feel loved now? And well, sometimes it doesn't happen.
Oh, I hear your point. I'm going to tell you what the Minister of Loneliness responsibility is. It's policy development, it's public awareness, it's support services, it's research and data collection, and it's community engagement. So that sounds a tad sterile, but I think just the fact that the British government had the wisdom to see how important it was to respond to the depth of loneliness within their country alone.
Right.
That to me is the real point. Just that they have it. I wish Canada would have that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, it's huge.
There's a poem that I'd like to read to you and to my listeners before we wrap up. It's called "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud," and it's written by William Wordsworth, and it goes as follows: I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in springly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft when on my couch I lie in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. I like the ending of that poem because, in essence, what it's saying is that when you do find your way through loneliness, there's nothing like it. There's nothing to make a friend, right, David? To make a friend,
Yeah.
right?
To make a friend, and to me, it's about appreciating the present. So much
Yeah.
again, with what we were talking before about social energy. One of the things I do, Tony Robbins has this priming exercise, and what he's doing it's a matter of having gratitude for the different types of energy we have. We have the energy of memories. We have the energy of presence. We have the energy of what we hope to accomplish in the future. And it's a matter of, again, a big thing is focusing on you. Like Avrum, I've enjoyed this hour. It's like I can't even believe it's flown by, and it's just because why? Because we're trying to build a conversation with one another, and I've been completely present. I'm not distracted. It's like
Here I am.
Here I am, and you sort of say, okay, fine. Now all I have to do is find this type of connection with a good-looking woman, and I'd be
And you're good to go.
Then I'm good to go. But other than that, it's like, so that's the problem.
I want to throw out one of my rules before we wrap up, and I want you to throw out a rule. I find that very often this happens with me, that when I am feeling alone, and I say to myself, my mindfulness, as you expressed before about yourself, my mindfulness says I go to the place where it says, okay, Avrum, pick up a phone, give a phone call to someone, hear a voice, talk, because when you speak, you become more alive, you become more at home with yourself. But you know something, David? Honestly, more than 50% of the time, I don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do it. And my compulsion is, as we go forward, because of this interview, is that I'm going to try to increase that number so that I do it more often. What's your rule? What's your final thought?
My rule would be, well, it's something I got from Jordan Peterson, is he has this great line. He says, pray that you have enough terror in you to be frightened by your own self-deceit. But I'm sort of fooling myself all of the time. And this is not that if I'm like, what could I be doing? What other things could I be doing now to help me achieve my goals?
Yes.
Or help me be more present and be more comfortable within myself, be happier with myself. And this is, and again, I find in having discussions with this, because again, I don't want to talk about it too much with other people, because it's like, oh, here's David talking about loneliness again. And it's not, it's like, okay, like Avrum, we're having this conversation because we're both coming into it with the same intentions. But it's not a conversation that you can really have with a lot of people to really sort of lighten up the situation. Like it's
Right. We're not great at parties, right? When it comes to
like
that.
this is not first date material.
David, is Jordan Peterson lonely? One gets that sense he is.
Oh, I don't think so. I think
Oh, you don't think so?
No, not at all. I think when he was sick, he was lonely, but it seems as if he has a wonderful relationship with his wife.
He does, yeah.
And he seems, and whenever he talks about how people come up to him all the time talking about how positive an effect he's had on their life. As a matter of fact, I was going to tell you that now that you mentioned it, when I was recovering in the hospital, I phoned up Dennis Prager's radio show, and I got on and I told him, Dennis, I figured out why you're so happy. And I said, because you have these four components in fighting loneliness. You know, obviously he knows himself. He has a wonderful relationship with his wife. He has family and friends. He has community and purpose. And you take all of those types of social energies together, and that's why that ultimately, those, like, again, it's like the mixing of the two ideas of if a person's living in a happy state.
Yes.
When a person's living in a happy state, I don't think they're lonely. And I told him, I think you have all five of the categories covered.
What did he respond?
He says, I think you're right.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
I managed to stretch out my interviews more so than likely I should. I've already talked about wrapping it up, but something's come to mind and I need to ask you.
Okay.
As Jews, of lovers of Israel, I'm a Zionist, you're a Zionist. You ever think about the loneliness of the hostages?
Absolutely. And I just pray that they have a sense of that people do care for them.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that. Many years ago, when the Wexner Foundation was coming to Toronto, I tried to get into it, but I wasn't enough of a macher to get in. But the first lesson that they taught was Pidyon Shevuyim. Mm-hmm. And it's what we were talking about before. And so Pidyon Shevuyim, for those who don't know, it means the redeeming of captives.
Yes.
And Pidyon Shevuyim, in many ways, like I'm thinking to myself, of all of the things that could be done in Jewish life, of this rich heritage, of all of the things that they're going to be talking about, the redeeming of captives is the first ethical imperative. And we're getting back to what we were talking about before, to bring others to freedom is what it means to act like God. And you have a sense of God. And when you have a sense of bringing these people to freedom, because we know how much of an insult it was. And again, the whole history of the Jewish people, that, we're supposed to feel that we were slaves in the land of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
We know what it's like to be a slave. Therefore, you don't treat people like that. Whereas right now in the politically correct world, it's like, well, you were treated badly. Now it's your time to stick it to the man.
Mm-hmm.
And so and again, I feel, obviously these people are going to be incredibly psychologically scarred the rest of their life, but they have to know that they're loved.
It's really interesting too when you read some of the documentation that's coming out about the hostages, those who have been released. You're hearing stuff like one fellow that I read about taught history classes to the other hostages whom he was with. And I thought, my, what a strong inner voice that man must have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even in the worst of times, no doubt in his entire life, he has the ability, he has the wherewithal to compel himself, to force himself, and to help other people not feel that dread of loneliness, right? And that's through the expression of the self, right?
Yeah.
So let me conclude the show.
Okay, buddy.
I want to thank David Burstein very much. You'll see at the bottom of the screen is his email. He's starting up a website having to do with the book that he's written. But for now, if you'd like to get it or ask him any questions, please feel free to do so.
The book's available at Amazon too.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's got some really good reviews too. You've done a great job.
Thank you very much.
So again, thank you to my guest, David Burstein. What I would ask everybody to do, please, is emulate what David has to say. Listen to it very carefully. Bring it into your own life. And if not yours, then share it with somebody else. This world that God created, or if you're an atheist, this world in which we share is magnificent with its pockmarks, right? With its problems. But by and large, just humankind in of itself, the ability that we have to create and to make ourselves happy, to make other people happy, to be as well-rounded as possible in the very short time that we're here, it's astounding. So I bring you such interviews because I want you to listen to individuals who have developed themselves in a particular way and to take that and say, yeah, that's me too. Yeah, I can do that. So once again, David, thank you so much for sharing. You're very honest, and I appreciate that very much. And I wish you well with your book, and I wish you well in life.
God bless you, Avrum. You've always been a mention. I haven't seen you in a while, and you just continue to be. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that very much. The show is dedicated to the lives of the hostages, to their families who are courageous and brave, to IDF soldiers who fight valiantly, courageously, bravely, not only for the state of Israel, but for every Jew in every place in the world. And I would argue they are fighting for every good individual throughout the entire world. So God bless them, and I look forward to